Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Samantha Harms with the Garrison Public Affairs Office, and this week we are switching things up a little bit. Fort Hood is going to redesignate to Fort Cavazos on May 9th, and we thought we would take the time to honor the namesake of General Cavazos by speaking with two people who know him pretty well. So we hope that you enjoy this week's episode, and we can't wait for us to come back as Fort Cavazos. Thank you so much for listening to the Great Big Podcast.
I'm Dr. Ed Mullen. I used to be Colonel Ed Mullen, but that was a long time ago. I knew General Cavazos before he came here and after he left here and during the time he was here. So, in fact, he brought me here in 1980. Yeah. So I thought he was a tremendous man. I did. What a hero. So I'm very pleased that the fort is being named for him.
That's great. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how he knew about you and was able to bring you here and kind of describe the relationship?
So I've had three close experiences with General Cavazos in the past. One before he was a Corps commander, one while he was a Corps commander, and one after he was Corps and he was Forces Command. So before he became the Corps commander here, I was at a formal dinner with a bunch of Army officers and their wives. And the head table had 7 or 8 guys at it, and they all had the Medal of Honor, every one of them. And in the center was General Cavazos, who had 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, which are right below the Medal of Honor, but under different circumstances, they might have been his too. We were there to honor him, and we had dinner, and then he got up to speak. And he spoke that time about his experience winning the first Distinguished Service Cross in Korea. He was a lieutenant. He attacked a hill. He led the attack on foot. He was wounded, knocked down, came back, went up again, knocked down, saved his own soldiers, brought them off the battlefield, and then the battle was over. So he didn't talk about that part. What he talked about was the next part. Because he was a hero, his division wanted to take him off the line and give him a staff job. So he was going down the line of his company, shaking hands, saying goodbye. And he got to his first sergeant, who would not shake his hand, who said, I'm not going to shake your hand. You're leaving because you are just as afraid as the rest of us. And General Cavazos said, it struck me to the heart. He said, I turned around and turned down that job and stayed with my company. When he finished telling that story, and he was much more eloquent than I, every man in that room had tears in his eyes. It struck the heart. So that was my first experience with him. I was shocked. And then shortly thereafter, I got a call from his aide, wanted me to come to Fort Hood to be his aide. And I had no idea why. The only experience I'd had was this tremendous speech. So I came here late because I had to go some other places and did not get that particular job, but I wound up being a S3 of 1st Brigade. And in that position, I saw him again. He came down, he was a Corps commander, and I was sitting in a readiness briefing, quarterly readiness briefing, which all commanders feared because you had to present to the general your readiness status. And while I was there, I watched, and the aviation brigade stood up and said, I am at 100%. All of my aircraft are 100%, which if you know anything about equipment and aircraft, that's not true. But he said it because he, like the rest of us, had covered over his errors with paper, put in requisitions to cover the parts that were missing. Common practice. General Cavazos just looked up at him and said, put him in the air. What do you mean, sir? He said, at 12 o'clock, I want to see all of your helicopters in the air today. Well, you know what happened. And so that was, but the experience there, the first experience was an officer in courage in battle. And the second experience, much here, by the way, he won a second Distinguished Service Cross in Vietnam's next war. Brave man. But the second experience was that that officer who knew how things worked and wanted them to work correctly and wanted things to be right, and he insisted on it. So that's when he was a Corps commander here. My third experience with him was a year or two later. He was a Forces Command commander, and he directed from Forces Command that my brigade create and test something he called the company team test, which is a multi-unit testing exercise. And so he wanted us to do it because he knew of us, I guess. So we put it together, and when we told him up in Forces Command that we were ready, he came down just like the helicopter guy. He said, okay, I'm coming. 4-star general, show it to me. And so he rode around in my Jeep for a week. He's supposed to be in Forces Command, wherever that was. But he rode around in my Jeep out here in Fort Hood for a week and observing and saying, I don't like that, fix that. And by the way, call the Corps commander, tell him to fix this thing over here. So again, the leader, who was not only attentive to all of his requirements, but wanted to see them work right. What a man. And so the last time I saw him was here. He was coming for a ceremony as a retired officer, and he had Alzheimer's, I believe. We talked, and he said, Ed, I can't remember anything anymore. It was sad. And he passed. What a man. You know, you run into people you want to be just like if you could. Yeah, there he was.
Could you talk a little bit about his experience and perspective, perhaps as the first Hispanic 4-star general, and how in the U.S. Army and how it shaped his leadership and the lessons that he was able to kind of impart on you during those experiences that you had with him?
Well, I'm telling you, I'm sure he was not impressed at all with the fact that he was the first Hispanic general. He came from a family that was distinguished by their achievements. He just expected, I'm sure, to be right up there with them. That's U.S. Secretary of what it was, Education, maybe, a college president. It was not unusual in his family to achieve heights, and I don't think he would give it two thoughts about, I'm the first Hispanic general. No, I mean, he was the first general of that time that needed to be the 4 stars. He was. He just, people sometimes are impressed by rank. I never knew him to be like that. I knew him to be a man who had a duty. He did it well. He expected to do it well, and he expected all around him to be the same. I am sure that he was not impressed by rank and accolades and things like that. He was impressed by good outcomes of the duties that he had. What a man, I'm telling you. Doesn't do any good to complain. Nobody's listening, you know. Yeah, you got to get out there and work, and that's what General Cavazos did every day of his life. When we were riding around my Jeep here, we were there for a purpose, company team test, but that didn't slow him down. Everything we saw on Fort Hood, he's go fix that, get that fixed. You know, had nothing to do with our tests, but he couldn't let something go that wasn't right.
Looking back on your time working with him, how would you describe his legacy and the impact he has had on the Army and the military as a whole?
Well, here we are, aren't we? But soldiers on the battlefield, they value courage. And so for the people that he led in battle, he affected them for life. For the Army, I mean, we're going to name this post after him because he was a symbol of what a great, what they say, great Hispanic officer, but I never think of him that way. He's a symbol of leadership who served here, and I think that's his legacy, is a legacy of excellence and courage and greatness.
Hey everyone, not gonna be online for a while. Got a big mission to kill some terrorists in Islamabad tomorrow, so don't worry about me.
An ambush today left 15 soldiers dead outside of Islamabad.
Will your next Facebook post or tweet kill you or your friends? The terrorists are waiting for you to give them the information they need to kill Americans and the American dream. When you share sensitive information on social networking sites, you might as well join the terrorists. Don't be a terrorist. Remember OPSEC.
This message brought to you by the Don't Help Terrorists Murder the American Dream Coalition.
Okay, so for our second individual, we spoke with retired General J.D. Thurman, who had previously served as the United States Army Forces Commanding General. So let's get right into our interview with him.
I first met General Cavazos when I was a squadron commander. I was commanding the 3rd Squadron, 4th Cavalry, 3rd Infantry Division in Schweinfurt, Germany. And we were doing a warfighter. General Cavazos spent roughly 17 years being at the Battle Command Training Program, which helps train divisions and corps on warfighting. General Cavazos was the senior mentor for our division, the 3rd Infantry Division, and which was headquartered in Würzburg, Germany. And he came over and he spent a lot of time in my Tactical Operations Center, talking to me, mentoring me. So I'm a beneficiary of his teachings and got to go on and command at every level in the United States Army. So I owe him a great deal for what he taught me as a professional, and he taught me about soldiering. We often say soldiering is an affair of the heart. He had the heart. What a tremendous individual. And he knew the business of warfighting. And he would spend countless hours in my Tactical Operations Center, because in the scenario we were running, I was the main effort initially with the Division Cavalry Squadron for the division commander. And I'll never ever forget it. He always talked about the importance of always talking to soldiers. And that struck me because I carried that on with my time commanding the 4th Infantry Division in Baghdad. And I had a saying, never walk past a soldier. That was General Cavazos. I don't care what rank, he would stand there and talk until the conversation was over, because he respected soldiers. He understood the human dimension of war fighting, and he understood the importance of training. He understood the importance of readiness, discipline, and standards. And I think we need to always remember what he taught us. So we did the exercise, and then I wrote down all sorts of things, his sayings and all that. And he was very humorous. And I thought, now that's a guy that knows this business. I next run into him at Fort Stewart at Hinesville, down near Hinesville, Georgia. We're doing another division warfighter. This time I'm the 2nd Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division commander, which was the heavy armor brigade. And again, same thing. He remembered me, he called me by my name, and spent many hours in my Tactical Operations Center again, because I was the main effort a lot of times for the division. But he would talk to all our soldiers and our staff and battalion commanders as we were running this exercise, which was another Corps warfighter. So we owe him a lot. He's a tremendous, he was a tremendous professional, and if you asked anybody that's around my age, we will tell you we're beneficiaries of his mentorship. He did that battle command training program for over 17 years, I think. And he did that with General Dave Grange. General Cavazos, a Korean War veteran, and was also a Vietnam veteran. Highly decorated, 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, Silver Star, Purple Heart, Bronze Star with Valor. He led from the front, and again, he understood that human dimension of warfighting, but a great professional, and I'm delighted to see that the decision was made to name this great installation, this great place, after General Dick Cavazos.
Perfect. So we're going to ask very similar questions over and over, just to kind of give opportunities to maybe bring up some other memories. So would you talk a little bit about, he obviously was your mentor through warfighting exercises. Could you talk a little bit about how your relationship evolved over the years?
Well, I think from the first time I met him, he had a great memory, and he didn't forget who I was. As I continued on, after brigade command, I went out to Fort Irwin and was the commander of the operations group at the National Training Center. And I stayed in touch with him because he was still at Fort Leavenworth with the Battle Command Training Program. And then I later returned after I was promoted to Brigadier General and took over as Commanding General of the National Training Center. And he continued to know who I was, and would always try to stay in touch with me, and I try to stay in touch with him, and as we went through the years and everything. But he didn't forget people. He did not forget people, and he wanted us all to do well.
What were some of the most important lessons that you learned from General Cavazos during your time of working with him?
Well, I often heard him say, never walk past a deficiency and not correct a soldier because you just signed his death warrant in combat. That stuck with me. He said that many times, and he'd get emotional about that. So he believed in, whether it's on a gunnery range or or in the motor pool. He believed in discipline and he believed in standards. And I carried that with me all the way from as a brigade level commander all the way to division command and into corps command. And it just, that stuck with me. Always talk to your soldiers. You know, he believed in taking care of soldiers. And if you take care of soldiers, and that means giving them tough love and discipline, they'll take care of you because they'll appreciate that, particularly on the battlefield. And I saw that many times in Iraq the year I was the division commander of multinational division, Baghdad, and 4th Infantry Division.
How did General Cavazos' leadership style influence your own leadership approach?
He was genuine. He didn't try to be somebody he wasn't. What you saw is what you got. And he was that way. And, you know, when you get promoted, you need to stay yourself. You need to be genuine. You know, because the one thing that I've learned is the soldiers will spot a phony in somebody that's trying to be somebody they're not. And that's one of the things that I remembered about him.
Can you share an example of a specific situation where General Cavazos' mentorship had a significant impact on your decision-making or leadership?
Yes. I think one of the other things that he talked about was, you know, the feel of the battle. Trust your instincts. And on the battlefield, for commanders, particularly division and corps level commanders, you have to anticipate and understand the enemy and what the enemy's doing to you. And know when things are not right. And know when you have to intervene. And that stuck with me because your instincts, the feel for a battle or a fight that you're in is something that it takes a commander to make decisions. And he also talked about decision making. You know, and I carried this over into the National Training Center. A commander on the battlefield, brigade level commander, is probably going to have to make 1, 2, 3 decisions. And the other thing that he taught us is read your orders. Understand what you're putting out and you're requiring people to do. Simple is best, less is best. But those are things that I picked up along the way, just hearing him, writing down things he said. Because, you know, there's no greater honor than a professional arms. When you think about it, that's why I miss the Army today, you know, being a retired guy. But the things that I put in my toolkit were from General Cavazos.
How did General Cavazos' experience and perspective as the first Hispanic 4-star general in the U.S. Army shape his leadership style and lessons that he imparted to you?
You know, I talked to General Randy House, who was his aide when he was a 3 Corps commander. General House was my brigade commander in Desert Storm. And the Army we took to Desert Storm in 89, 90, 91 time frame, 90, was a result of the training and mentorship of General Cavazos and guys like General Dave Grange as they started this battle command training program. General House told me that, General Cavazos' father was a World War I veteran and was a ranch foreman on the King Ranch down in South Texas, Hispanic. And ranching is hard work. Matter of fact, he said, being a cowboy was very close to being a soldier because it was hard work. And I think he wanted to make all Hispanics better. He encouraged them to speak English, and he could relate to his culture and always turned back to his father about the hard work and how he was taught growing up, which made him a better soldier and everything. So I think he'd be very proud. He didn't like long speeches and people talking a lot, from what I was told. But he's, I think, very respected in the community as who he is. But number one, he was a soldier.
Your Army Digital Garrison app is a great way to explore your community. With expanded features, including access to an app library, MWR Travel Services, and American Forces Travel, the Digital Garrison provides direct access to installation-specific news, information, and alerts. Find local dining options and events. Browse great shopping deals at your Exchange, Express, and ShopMyExchange.com, and the Commissary. Search for Digital Garrison in the App Store to connect with your installation and community. Powered by the United States Army and your Exchange.
Hey, welcome back. This is Eric Franklin with the Garrison Public Affairs Office, and those two interviews were great. I love it when we get to talk to people, especially retired veterans who spent so much of their life giving back to America.
I know. It was really great to speak with them, and it was really interesting to hear their personal histories and to hear about General Cavazos as well. I think that there's a lot that is happening with the redesignation, and sometimes it's really good just to sit back and think about, we are redesignating after somebody, and, it's important to think about who that person was, and these two gentlemen tell his story so well.
I think one of the stories that caught my attention the most was General J.D. Thurman, I forgot his name that quick. And he's out there on the wall. I should remember this. But one of the stories that General Thurman had said was just talking about he was just a man full of life who came into the room and he commanded the room. And it wasn't like he wanted to command the room. It's just his presence was just that much that it commanded the room.
Yeah, he's just a natural born leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And so next week, by the time this comes out, well, if you're listening to this in real time, as Samantha says,
we know people listen. Thursday it comes out.
Exactly.
Shout out to you guys.
We appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
Speaking of that, make sure you go ahead and leave us a comment and or subscribe.
5 stars.
5 stars. But this will be the last Fort Hood great big podcast. I know we dropped the Fort Hood off of our podcast, but this is technically the last Fort Hood podcast.
I know. So our outro credits that we do every week, we're gonna have to change because we're no longer U.S. Army Garrison Fort Hood.
We are not.
U.S. Army Garrison Fort Cavazos, which is gonna be so weird to say for a while because even when I was doing the intro for this, I wanted to say thanks for being a part of Fort Hood and the whole thing.
And but I think change is good sometimes. I think that
I agree for sure.
Everyone in the community has rallied around Fort Hood, and we've done an amazing job. There's so much stuff that goes on behind the curtains that people don't get to see, and I think once everything comes together, I think it's going to be great. I think everyone's going to be like, wow, they did an amazing job at this.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of, you were kind of alluding to this already, but for next week's episode, So we will redesignate to Fort Cavazos on May 9th, which is a
Yes.
Tuesday. So next week's episode of this podcast is going to be just the ceremony.
Yes.
So, of course, it's going to be an audio version. We will link to the live stream, so the video version,
Yes.
in the show notes for next week's show. And we can link for people to RSVP to watch online as well in this week's
We
show
will
notes.
do that.
But we will dictate to you guys what happened. So for people who didn't get to see and kind of want to listen to what everybody has to say, all the speeches that were happening, that's what we're going to do for next week. So I'm excited. I think it'll be really fun. We're all going to be a part of a historic moment.
Yes, and I think that's what the coolest part is too, is that very seldomly do you get to be a part of history.
Yeah.
And we're part of it.
Absolutely.
We are making history this week, and next week we're going to be part of making history, and I think that's an amazing thing.
I think so too. So we want to say thank you to everybody who listens to this podcast. We are almost to 200 episodes. This
Yes.
fall we'll hit 200, which is wild to think about.
Wild.
So, but yeah, thank you everybody for listening. We appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
We will talk to you next week.
Bye.
This podcast is a U.S. Army Garrison Fort Hood and Fort Hood Public Affairs production. The show's theme music is written and produced by Delicious All-Stars. All our music is obtained through Filter by Songtrader. Have a question or want to share some insights with us? Email us at forthoodpao@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at USAG Fort Hood. And as always, be sure to leave a review and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.